No, ho, ho, ho. Hello, everyone. I'm already regretting doing that. I'm not doing another take. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I'm Mr. Warren Hayes, and this is a pro wrestling podcast, which means that we are going to be talking about professional wrestling for a while right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application. If you are listening to this on YouTube, you know the drill by now. Leave a like if you don't mind, and a subscription. Look, I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're super close. Very, very close. If you're not subscribed yet, that'd be a nice little holiday gift. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much in advance. But if you're listening to this on your favorite audio platform, hey, 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, 5-star ratings on Spotify. Help out a great deal as well. And appreciate the little boost of support here as we're wrapping up 2023, surely. Leave us, why don't you come join us in the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord and make fun of, me and talk about pro wrestling on top of that. The link is in the description. We'd love to have you. And look, I'm going to stay on the schedule this week. We're going to be back this Thursday with the Dynamite review and the Collision review on Christmas Eve this Sunday. We're going to be breaking down the 2 final nights of league action in the C2. So be sure that you're around for that, because that's going to be exciting. Hey, it's a good reason to subscribe and follow and all that good stuff. But as it stands for right now, for this podcast right here, well, we're going to be talking about quite a few things here tonight. We're going to revisit what we started talking about last week in regards to Warner Bros. Discovery and WWE. We're going to, I got to follow up on it. Hey, look, you'll see in a second. We're going to follow up on that. We're going to also have our weekly update on the AEW Continental Classic. We're going to be reviewing Ring of Honor Final Battle 2023 and a couple of more news and notes and interesting things happening in regards to contracts and whatnot. Just a lot of stuff going on in pro wrestling this week. Strap in. Here we go with the weekly wrestling inspection, and thank you for being here. Now, last week, okay, as I was firing up the old stream, as we were kicking off the whole shebang last Tuesday, we were getting a breaking tweet. a xit. What the fuck do they call them now? What do they call them now on X, formerly Twitter? You know what? Don't tell me. I don't care. I don't care. I really don't. But we did get this breaking tweet from the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer, a big old vague tweet about discussions heating up in regards to Raw's TV rights deals. For the sake of the record, we read it last week, but just for context, we'll say it again here. Things are changing greatly. Let's just say things changed greatly with Raw negotiations from a few weeks ago, and Punk is a huge part of the selling point. Now, when he says Punk, he does not mean the anarchist music movement from the mid 70s. With includes such luminaries as the Sex Pistols, the Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, Husker Du, the Ramones, the Misfits, so on and so forth. He's talking about CM Punk. He did not mean the Matthew Lillard film SLC Punk either. No, he was talking about CM Punk, Phil Brooks, if you prefer. And this, tossed everyone, it tossed the whole world of pro wrestling into a tizzy because everyone was wondering what the hell Dave was talking about. Wouldn't be the first time. and what was it that he knew? What was he talking about exactly? Well, he cleared that all up on the December 14 edition of the of Wrestling Observer Radio, where he provided more clarification on what he said, and then on top of that, he even wrote up a little something on the Observer website as well. So here's what he wrote. From the start, analysts have believed that NBCU, Disney, Amazon Prime, and Warner Bros. Discovery were all potential suitors for the show that starts its 32nd year in a few weeks. We're talking about Monday Night Raw here, of course. Warner Bros. Discovery, due to its affiliation with AEW, was always considered a long shot, and the word going around was that Warner Bros. Discovery was no longer in the game as of October. And this is something that I believe Dave himself reported in an edition of The Observer, where he outright said that Nick Khan had gone to meet up with Warner Bros. And that was pretty much the end of that, right? And then on top of that, even after Dave tweeted this out, I think it was Mike Johnson over at Pro Wrestling Insider actually named some names. He named, and I don't have the thing right in front of me here, so but he named whichever executive it was at WBD who was there. Said Nick Khan had gone, Triple H, Paul Levesque had gone as well. That's the one same person, in case you're new to pro wrestling. If you're new here, that's not three people, it's one person. What? That made me laugh, okay? Fuck you. I thought that was funny. I enjoyed that bit. I'll probably do it again sometime. What do you want from me? I'm easily amused. Mark so basically everyone was sitting around the table and chatting here. Dave continues, the CM Punk signing looks to have opened up doors since Endeavor's Mark Shapiro, along with Nick Khan and Paul Levesque, had a meeting with WBD on Monday morning. Okay, so basically he's corroborating what Mike Johnson was saying over at PW Insider. One report we had was that Punk was a major part of the pitch, with the idea that he'd be a regular on the Raw brand. The report we had included pushing his included pushing his merchandise sales and social media views, along with ratings of recent shows, like the 2 shows he had been on. Obviously, the situation is back wide open, and this greatly affects AEW, which has also been in talks with WBD on a number of deals, besides just television rights renewals, including potential streaming. WBD also gets a cut of AEW streaming pay-per-view buys through Bleacher Report. So that's essentially that's the high-level stuff here that Dave brought us. It all kind of falls into place, makes a lot of sense. I can't blame Nick Khan. Of course, considering all of this is accurate, right? This is always the caveat that we have to bring here, right? Hey, thank you very much, Louie Lou, for subscribing. Appreciate it. Thank you and welcome. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's fantastic. Let's keep this ball rolling. Merry Christmas. La la la. I can't blame Nick Khan at all. Like if he signs CM Punk, brings him in, and he knows, because this guy's not a dope. This guy's the least dopiest person in pro wrestling, and I say that I think sincerely. I don't think there's anyone involved in pro wrestling who is on the ball that gets the business aspects more than Nick Khan. So they bring in CM Punk. They had a few talks with Warner Bros. And, they got a little cold, and that was that. But they bring in CM Punk, a guy that, from what we understand, was the cornerstone of a new vision for AEW just a few months ago, just like last spring. It's crazy how fast things go. CM Punk was at the cornerstone of that. They gave him his own show. He was the centerpiece of the show. You know, there was the whole thing, the One Bill Phil thing with David Zaslav and whatnot. I don't blame Nick Khan to, you know, knocked on the door and say, hey, maybe you'd like to talk again because, you know, that CM Punk guy that y'all like so much, we got him now. You know, he's ours now, and he's gonna be a regular on the show. And look at the business he's already making for us. And so, I mean, I can absolutely understand people, you know, these executives getting together around the table once again and doing it. And it just makes sense. It just makes sense. You're trying to land a deal with your television product. It all makes sense. Like, I don't think it's that earth-shattering. And I think that in the context of the wrestling bubble in and about itself, you know, where we have histories of people creating exclusivities and bumping other people off networks and so on and so forth. I think that it suddenly takes this much more dramatic, turn as for us anyway, as maybe anyone else in the business was just like, look, we had an opportunity to talk, and we just wanted to see if things could work out. So look. Like, basically here, I think that's fine. Want to say hi, by the way, to Omizi20 and happy holidays to you, and Zach McGibbon, who's here as well, and happy holidays to you as well. Good to see you. Good to see everyone in the chat tonight. It's fantastic. So, and you know, I don't even think this is CM Punk. You know, a lot of here's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not going to, what I don't want to do is sit here and try to break all this down when ultimately we're going to know in a couple of months. These are decisions that will not affect wrestling programming in 2020, not before 2024, right? So it's all conjecture, it's all speculation. So, you know, I don't want to run down the whole thing, you know. You know, and as much as, you know, the rumors going around have people excited, you know, we kind of know where these rumors come from as well, right? We know where they're coming from. I think it was Sean Ross Sapp on one of his podcasts essentially said, you know, that CM Punk was feeding him this news. So, you know, CM Punk can't help himself. CM Punk just cannot keep it to himself. He's got to leak shit. He's got to jump out of, he goes to a new place and there's stuff going on and he has to talk to people, and then he's going to say, oh, journalists, the dirt sheets, but he's the guy talking to them. You know, I know all of this spurred some thoughts where it's like, oh, CM Punk, this son of a bitch, wants to tear it all down. All of this has the potential of not even being 100% factual. Where it's just CM Punk leaking things and just, letting nature take its course at this point, right? Because that's what he does. What was the point? Yeah, no, the point that I wanted to make was that, since CM Punk, is feeding this information, even though he's the guy feeding this information, I don't think that he's behind these meetings. Maybe he facilitated them, but I'm sure he didn't pressure anyone at that company to get in touch with Warner Bros. Discovery. But maybe, like I said, because I think that's short selling a guy like Nick Khan, who is, he's a shark. He knows these environments, these waters. He gets them. He's a hell of an executive. Like, you're starting up your own wrestling promotion or whatever. I'm pretty sure you want this guy on your side, right? So, to say that CM Punk is was the reason, facilitated the meeting or got Nick Khan to go to Warner Bros. Discovery. I think it's shortchanging Warner Bros. Discovery. I think it's much more plausible that Nick Khan saw the opportunity and said, hey, why don't we do this? And at the very least, called up Phil or, via whoever and said, hey, do you think you could facilitate a meeting? And maybe they didn't even need to facilitate a meeting because they had already met before. It's like, I'm not, trust me, I'm not here defending CM Punk, but I also think that the a weirdo narrative that he's the guy who's making all of this happen is also debilitatingly weird because it doesn't make sense. Nick Khan had already met with Warner Bros. Discovery previous. Nick Khan is a businessman. He's got his fingers on the pulse. He sees an opportunity to go sit down with Warner Brothers again. I think that's how it went. And maybe Phil had an facilitate, but that's tremendous maybe. He saw an opportunity. He said, look, this is the guy that Warner Bros. Wanted. They wanted him. AEW couldn't deliver. We'll deliver him. We'll bring him to you. I know the weirdo narrative is hilarious. Of course, chat. It's fucking hilarious. It's also mind-boggling sometimes, how... Anyway, but I understand. I understand how this goes. And by the way, Kristen Ashley, member for 43 months of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show channel. Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it. She says, all I want for Christmas is to never talk about CM Punk. We don't do that on this podcast, though. We will always talk about CM Punk on this podcast. Things are much more interesting when he's around. Derek, nice to see you and happy. Derek. Nice to see you. And thank you for being here. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. So yeah. Now, the question, what I would like to offer, what I feel is a counterpoint to what is going out there tremendous, like where I see pretty much everywhere in regards to Raw going potentially to Warner Bros. Discovery. Would it be unprecedented in the history of WWE to push someone off of a network? No. No. Would they still even negotiate exclusivity? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe not. This is a different company now. They don't operate the same way anymore. Would they absolutely require, exclusivity as far as pro wrestling content goes on their network? Maybe, but also maybe not. This will be a good way to see just if it ever does happen and AEW stays on Warner Bros. Discovery. Well, that's fantastic. It'll be a precedent. It'll be a brand new precedent. Then it'll be some more insight on how this company is going to operate moving forward. Look, we have 40 years of Vince McMahon doing a thing, 50 years of Vince McMahon doing things a certain way. There's certain things, there's behaviors, patterns that we expect. Now Vince is gone. What's going to happen moving forward? We'll see about that. I feel, again, this is something that I feel, right? I feel like if you have a wrestling program which is going quite well for your network, you seem very satisfied with the ratings. You're putting out press releases once in a while when they score big numbers and whatnot, and that you're buying at a fraction of the price of WWE programming, and you're getting good ad rates. You're doing good in the demo. You're always like in the top 3 shows every Wednesday night, every Saturday night. You're performing well. You're performing within expectations. Why would you change that? Why, unless there's things that we're not seeing, why would you change that? if we're just basing ourselves off of the data that you have here, why would you spend more money and substantially more money to bring in another wrestling product that would generate sure, more viewership overall, but is it enough viewership to justify the purchase, to justify the price? Because there's carriage fees as well, which is important. So it's not just about ads, it's about the number of actual people who subscribe to your channel via cable networks, right? We've talked about this before, where the carriage fees are just as important for cable networks as well, because that's what they charge a cable provider like Comcast and whatnot to carry their channel. And that's based on the viewership. That's based on total amount of people watching every week. So that's why the ratings are different, are a little more different, a little more, you have to interpret them differently from what you get on network television versus what you get on cable. On cable TV, the viewership is very important because, they being the networks are able to make some money off of that through the cable providers. So you have to ask yourself that on a very basic level. Are we able to do this? Should we, Warner Bros. Discovery, are we able to buy another wrestling product at a substantially higher price? They're obviously, if they hang on to AEW, they're giving them a raise. But are they going to give them a WWE level raise? And maybe not. And essentially, this could all just be a very basic tactic to fuck with AEW's deal. And not in the sense of saying, we're going to knock you off the network, just to go in and sit down and flash some numbers at Mark Shapiro, right? Was there? Flash some numbers at Shapiro, and then Shapiro goes back to look, and he looks at, and he looks at the numbers WWE has and the money that they're asking for, and he goes and he looks over at AEW and he says, look, your numbers are this, and WWE are asking for this, so we're going to offer you this. And maybe Tony's like, well, I was expecting more. Yeah, but look at these two comparisons. Like, that could be exactly what WWE just wants to do to fuck with the deal. To just go down, talk to Mark Shapiro, give them some more of their great metrics, and then say, okay, well, ball's in your court, bye-bye. Maybe, not necessarily expecting them to do anything. But then you can also ask the question, does a guy like Nick Khan have time to get in a jet, fly to, WBD headquarters just to fuck with Tony Khan? Does he have time to do that? At his level? I'm pretty sure he's got other fish to fry, and he's not Vince McMahon. I can absolutely see Vince McMahon doing that because Vince was a petty, combative son of a bitch. But Nick is not Vince McMahon. And for all we know, Nick is like, all of this history that you people have, stomping out the competition, I don't give a shit. I want to focus on making us money. And if there's other guys making money, who cares? That'll help us make a better case to make more money for us. Because that's how it goes these days. You compare your metrics to others, and that's how you raise your price. Anyway. So yeah, there's a lot, there's some stuff here that tracks to a certain degree. And then when you really start to think about it, like none of this really makes sense on the surface level. That it's just like, we're coming in here to, I'm sure they would appreciate a great deal from Warner Bros. Discovery. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that there's probably layers to this, and there's probably strategies, different levels of strategies here, other than let's knock AEW off their network. Could be just screwing around with them. Look, and we know the Endeavor people, they want return on investment as soon as possible. WWE doesn't have time to fuck around with TKO. Let's put it that way. Doesn't have time to fuck around. they need to land the best possible deal. It's just as simple as that for their shareholders, for Endeavor to get some return on investment here. So that's it's a significant, it's a significant thing to think about. And if ever AEW gets bounced off of Warner Bros. Discovery, it's not the end of the world. Again, this is something. There is historical precedent here as well from WWE. Y'all remember the Spike TV, TNN debacle, sci-fi, all that stuff. And then what happened? WWE came back to USA. Why did they come back to USA? Because USA's nothing without WWE. There's no, at least in 2023, there is no USA Network if there's no WWE programming going on there, there's doom and gloomers. We're like, oh well, it's the point of no return if AEW loses their network. AEW will find another home. They'll find another home, and maybe they'll land a deal that maybe for a couple of years won't be ideal. But what a lot of people seem to fail to think is that this type of competition that we're living in here right now, that I know a lot of newer fans are not used to because WWE has been essentially a monopoly for 2 decades. But a lot of newer fans don't remember the days of true competition on television and how it elevates everything, and it also elevates everyone. We're talking about the talent and how it's good for talent, but it also elevates the production, makes everyone try to do their best, and it brings out the best in everyone, brings out the best in the negotiators and people who sit around the tables and sit in conference rooms to try and make their product better than the other, make it shinier than the other. It's good for everyone, and it's going to be so. If AEW at this point, walk through this with me right now. What if, just bear with me, what if over the past summer, AEW got a little complacent, got a little, and you know what I'm talking about. There's been tremendous amounts of criticism levied onto AEW for months in regards to storytelling and how they were changing their presentation and how the angles were being presented and so on and so forth. What if AEW had got a little complacent because, your boy Tony Khan was going just knocking back saying, I've got this deal in the bag. We're talking about going on Max, and I've got this big Wembley show. Don't forget don't you remember when they announced the Wembley show? They had said that this would be part of the 100-year celebration of HBO or whatever, or of Warner Bros., right? Do you remember that? And that was never fucking mentioned. That wasn't, at some point, that was just wiped clean from the board. And we never heard anyone talk about, All In being a part of the 100-year celebrations of Warner. You remember that? Maybe Tony got a little too comfortable. Maybe Tony was sort of like, got a little comfortable, maybe got a little cocky, and his product started to suffer. And attendance, well, we all know attendance stinks. I talk about it on every fucking Dynamite and Collision review. We talk about, attendance outside of the pay-per-views. Attendance stinks. Ratings, stable, but, were once much better. Pay-per-views are stable, so lots of business metrics in which AEW doesn't look, feel, come across as hot anymore. So what if Tony just needed this to get, to shake the tree a little bit? And look at what's happening. And he pulls out the Continental Classic. Now you can feel a shift in tone, restore the feeling, etc., etc. Maybe this is the kind of thing where you need a wake-up call, where, you're listening to the wrong people. You're not listening to the people who brought you to the dance in the first place. Maybe things were, everyone is human. Everyone gets a big head. Everyone gets, arrogant or whatnot. I'm just saying. So if this type of situation, basically, if this type of situation makes Warner Bros. Feel, not Warner Bros., but makes AEW feel like they have to tighten up ship and get better, who benefits? Who benefits? Me? You? Everyone? Wrestling fans benefit from this kind of situation. So you can sit here and say doom and gloom as much as you want. You can pull out your best Eric Bischoff impersonation, right? And he should know about failing wrestling promotions, right? And you can pull off your best Eric Bischoff here if you want. But the fact is that AEW is a success. It's a 5-year company that has achieved unparalleled levels of success in the history of pro wrestling in such a short amount of time. Yeah, oh, yes, it has NFL money backing it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. That helps, but the end result doesn't change. You know? So this is where we're going right now. And I think this is all very good. And AEW is going to survive. And it's going to move on. It'll move on to somewhere else. It'll go anywhere else. It'll go to any other network. You know, there's ESPN already be talking about it. And look, we always talk about the streaming services. We talk about the streaming services. We talk about ESPN, FX. You know, Tony wanted to be always wanted to be tremendously loyal to Warner Bros. Discovery. We're going to see if that pays off. We're going to see if, we'll just see if that kind of stuff pays off. It's a fascinating time. It's a fascinating time, and this is exciting, and it's good. Wrestling in a status quo stinks. And this, it's good for WWE, because I'm sure WWE is in a position to negotiate. It probably has some advantages in regards to the negotiations to have a competitor, just like it has disadvantages, and vice versa. For AEW, same thing. I'm sure WWE in the marketplace represents opportunities and threats without a shadow of a doubt. That's just how it goes. But you try to accentuate the positives, work on the opportunities while staying realistic about the threats, and then you move on, right? Look, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But as an A+ audience listening to a D-list podcaster, I know you all understand this. I know you get this. That AEW is not suddenly going to implode. It's not going to disappear off the face of the earth if something were to happen to a WBD deal here, right? Right. Let's get into some actual fun stuff instead of business reports and the AEW Continental Classic is we're getting into the final week of league action, I should say. And so tonight at Wednesday, we're recording this on December 19. So tomorrow on Dynamite will be the last night of action for Gold League. And then this Saturday, last night of action for Blue League. Before we get into the tournament itself, little bit of ratings talk, since we're doing a little recap, because I think this is because I think it's interesting. Again, I don't want to bore anyone with ratings talk, and it's not necessarily I'm gonna bear with me here for a second, but I think that as we're moving along, I think it's fair to say that the C2 is a draw. Saturday night's episode of AEW Collision this past Saturday averaged 457,000 viewers on TNT, which is up 0.4% from the previous week, which went up against a WWE PLE or NXT PLE and we talked about it last week, right? Which was surprising for a lot of us who keep an eye on this stuff, that collision that went up against Deadline was able to punch in such a high number, because usually WWE PLEs on Saturdays demolish AEW in the ratings. Well, they were able to maintain a good rating 2 weeks ago, and he even improved on that this week, again with no direct WWE competition. Collision drew a .15 rating in the demo, and that's up 7.1% from last week. And that's the show's highest rating in that category since October 21st. Collision went head-to-head with an NFL game between the Denver Broncos and the Detroit Lions on the NFL Network, which averaged 9.15 million viewers. It also had competition from a college football game on NBC that averaged 2.2 million. So, why am I bringing this up? Because we have a second consecutive week of really strong Collision ratings. And when you look at the quarter hours, you can directly see that people are tuning in to watch the Continental Classic. They're punching in to watch the C2 matches. Those are the quarter hours that start to improve. So isn't this interesting that, Tony Khan decided to pull this off? You remember how he introduced this when he was talking about how how he was very combative when he brought that forward, and he said, it's time for all you viewers to put your money where your mouth is and tune in. Guess what's happening? People are tuning in. I think that this is indicative of something very important, that I hope there's a lesson that will be taken from this. And I feel right now that the lesson is AEW, as it positions itself as a true alternative and presents a different product from what WWE is presenting, is truly at its most successful. When it tries to be WWE Junior, it just flops. It doesn't work out, and people don't tune in to watch it. Not as much anyway. And between, if the strategy was to do this, rely more heavily on angles and vignettes and these types of situations, if that was the situation that we were trying to do, if that was the strategy, I should say, we were trying to do, then the strategy then that would be a strategy to bring in WWE viewers, right? If you're doing a product that is more palpable for WWE viewers, then you're trying to bring them in. Then this also shows that choosing between the two, WWE viewers will choose to watch their WWE programming, as opposed to people who are truly looking for an alternative in pro wrestling, right? Kind of like myself. It's kind of looking for something different. So, just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I want to talk about the blocks, the league, sorry. That's the G1 in me. As we get into the last 2 nights of league action, here are the current standings in the Gold League. Jon Moxley is 4-0. He has 12 points. He is this is clinched. He has won Gold League. He will finish on top of the group here. Swerve Strickland and Jay White both at 9 points at 3-1. Roosh, Jay Lethal, and Mark Briscoe are all eliminated from the tournament. Roosh is 2-2. He has 6 points. Jay Lethal and Mark Briscoe are they both have 0 points up on the board. They will be having their last match this week, this Wednesday, on Dynamite. And Roosh is eliminated. If I'm not mistaken, let me pull up the proper graphic here. See, even if he makes it to 9, even if he makes it to 9, he has losses. Let me see here. He has losses against both. He has a loss against Jay White. So if Jay White wins, so even if Jay White loses his last match, Rush still has the tiebreaker over him. And if and he's fighting Swerve Strickland on, and he's fighting Swerve Strickland, and yeah, he just can't. It's just not working out for him. He's gone. Our boy Rush is. So essentially, what we're going to be looking forward to on Wednesday is what happens between Swerve Strickland and Jay Lethal. Basically, they are going to go into their matches to clinch the runner-up spot. And there's 2 scenarios possible here, right? One of these 2 guys is going to go forward. One of them has a fairly easy way to get into it. He just has to win a match, which is Swerve Strickland. If he wins, he advances. Even if Jay White wins his match and they tie up at they tie up in points, they tie up at 12. Even if that happens, Swerve already has the tiebreaker over Jay White. So if Swerve wins, that's it. Sayonara, Jay White. It was nice. It was nice seeing you. But for Jay White to go forward, he needs to win, and Swerve needs to lose or draw. So White's conditions are not entirely up to him, whereas Swerve's conditions are entirely up to him. That's all he needs to do. There's a question in the chat. I don't think it's very clear who fights who in the semis. We still don't know if the semis are going to be, the winner and runner-up within the same leagues, or if we're doing gold winner versus blue runner-up and blue winner versus gold runner-up. We don't know yet. But the tiebreakers we know. They clarified that last Wednesday on Dynamite that it's G1 style. It's G1 style tiebreakers. It's head-to-head tiebreakers. So that we know. So that's the situation we're in right now in regards to the Gold League. That was tremendous here. In the Blue League, here are the standings. You have Andrade El Idolo and Bryan Danielson, both up there at the top with 9 points, both at 3-1. Brody King, Eddie Kingston, Claudio Castagnoli are all wrapping up the second place, I guess, at 6 points. They're all 2-2, and Dan Garcia right now is the only person who is officially, mathematically eliminated from the C2. So this weekend's upcoming matches are Andrade versus Eddie Kingston, Claudio Castagnoli versus Dan Garcia, versus Bryan Danielson. Oh, hell of a brain fart there. And Brody King versus Daniel Garcia. So, as opposed to on Wednesday for the Gold League, where there's really like 2 matches of interest, where there's really 2 matches that you have to keep your eye on, Moxley versus White and Swerve versus Rush. This Saturday, it's a little bit all over the place. And I'm going to try and break this down because potentially we have 5 guys here who could still qualify in one way or another. The simplest ones. Andrade, he'll advance with a win or a draw over Eddie Kingston. Same with Danielson, he'll advance with a win or a draw over Claudio. Eddie Kingston, because that's always the question I get. What about Eddie, Warren? Can Eddie make it? Is he still in there? Eddie needs to win, of course, and he needs Brody King to lose or draw. That's what has to happen for him. That's the only way he advances. Because he'll advance because he has, well, that's not the right graphic here. He'll advance because he will have tied Andrade because he's fighting Andrade on Saturday, right? And he'll have the tiebreaker over Andrade, so he'll end up with 9 points, which is what Andrade has, but he'll have the tiebreaker. So that'll be very interesting there. Big prediction in the chat here that Bryan versus Claudio is going to go to a draw. I mean, if there's one match that I've been calling for the 20-minute draw for a couple of matches, and it hasn't happened yet. But if there's one that makes a ton of sense at this point, it would be that one. So basically that's what has to happen with Eddie. Claudio advances. Now, Claudio, he'll advance, but his is it's a little more torturous. He'll advance if he wins and Eddie Kingston loses or draws, and if Brody King loses or draws. So Claudio's chances are a little thin, right? Because then both men who beat him will finish with less than 9 points. So that's going to be significant for him. Brody King will advance. He might advance, I should say. If he wins and Andrade loses and Bryan Danielson loses. But if you ask me, I think Brody King is soft eliminated from the tournament because he's 3 points behind Andrade and Danielson. And I think that's a rough one. I think it's a tough one for Brody King here to overcome. If anything, the Claudio situation is a little more realistic. I'm calling Brody King soft eliminated from the C2. Even though there is a mathematical possibility that he can still pull it off. I think when you look at how things are booked and how things are set right now, I think that's a situation here. So some fantasy booking in the chat going on, and that's tremendous. And yes, Dan Garcia beating Brody King would absolutely that would absolutely spoil the tournament for Brody. And I think that would be a nice little way to a nice little period to put on Danny's tournament. Didn't have a great C2, but at least finished with some point on the boards. And here's some long-term sports-based storytelling here. Then next year, Garcia re-enters the tournament and tears shit up. Then he's like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to finish at the bottom of the league this year. Which is a story that Gato likes to tell year after year in the G1 with the new guys coming in. You have a new guy come in and he eats shit for a couple of years. Then all of a sudden, he's having great tournaments. Or he's Yoshihashi, and Yoshihashi still has shit tournaments, but at least his matches are great. He's not having bad luck Fale matches. We're going off base here, but that's essentially the situation that's laid out for us here right now. And I think this is super compelling. I think this is great. I'm really excited to see how the Blue League is gonna. What did I tell you about the Blue League when all this started? What did I say? I said my favorite is gonna be the Blue League. That's gonna be the one. And don't get me wrong, Gold has been great, but Blue League's been tremendous. Awesome matches. Some of the best in the tournament are here. In fact, the best match of the tournament happened this past Saturday on Collision in the Blue League. Bryan Danielson versus Brody King. Tremendous fucking match. Amazing stuff. Unbelievable stuff. And I'm not pissing on the Gold League. I think, overall, this has been a good tournament. Started off a little rough. Got through it. I thought it's fun. It's been fun. And I think Collision has been the Blue League really has been the centerpiece. It's been absolutely tremendous. So this week, final week of league action. Then next week, we're in the semis. We're in the semis. And then we're going into World's End. Tremendous. Just absolutely tremendous stuff. And I have committed myself to writing up a complete Continental Classic recap for Voices of Wrestling. So you'll be wanting to check that out. I'm gonna break down everything, the results, the positives, the negatives, the reception, the ratings. I already have the title in my head, but I'm not spoiling it just yet. But these past 2 weeks have the past week of action, I should say, not the past 2 weeks, but specifically the last week, because we haven't spoken in about a week. Have had tremendous action. I thought, Swerve versus Mox was tremendous, and I still think leaves the door open. And I know a lot of people hated the decision, but I think it leaves the door way open for a rematch, and probably in the semis. Because the more we're moving forward, the more I'm feeling that we're doing semis within the league. So it's going to be number 1 and number 2 within the same league. So we're going to be rehashing a match. And I think we're doing that with Mox and Swerve, because Mox and Swerve felt like they left something in the tank. There's one in the chamber, and they're gonna pull it the next time they fight. And I think it's going to be in the context of the semis. That's what I feel. I could be wrong. You could still do it if you do if you do proper playoffs, proper semis between the leagues. Then they'll be in the main. They'll be in the finals at World's End, kind of thing. But we'll see. I basically what I was saying is that I love the match, even though I think that there's something left in there. And Collision this week, look, you can check out my Collision review. I outright think it's the greatest Collision that they ever did. I thought it was the most entertaining. It was the most entertaining wrestling show I've seen in months, from top to bottom. Like, nothing stunk up the joint. Nothing felt out of place. Not just in the Continental Classic matches. The Continental Classic matches were tremendous. The opener was amazing. The main event was close to excellent. It was just so fantastic. And then I can't remember what was the one in the it opened up with Claudio and Andrade, right? And then so it was Eddie and Daniel, right? And that was tremendous too. And then you had the women, the tag, the plunder match, which was a blast. The squash matches all had I said, the low point was the promo, the FTR House of Black promo. And like I said on the show, on my review, wasn't even that much of a low point. Like, it wasn't bad. It wasn't like Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho bad from last week's Dynamite. It was fine. It was a competent promo, but it was the lower bar. It was the one thing that felt out of place in regards to everything else. But again, not terrible, and not enough to drag me down and not sit here and say this was the best Collision they've ever done. I had a tremendous time watching it. And, to me, this is the bar. This is how good your wrestling show on Saturday nights should be. It was a blast to watch. It was a breeze to watch. Everything connected and it was great. It was just like a tremendous show. And this is all buoyed by the C2. And it's, like I said, I think Tony Khan came out swinging with this one. He was a little combative, didn't appreciate how he presented it. It was kind of like a, here, eat this and shut the fuck up, kind of thing. Eat your vegetables, you children. Despite the fact that I don't think it was really well built to start off. I think we could have gotten more excited about it. I think there's a lot of mistakes that we don't have to repeat next year. I think I'm already doing like a fucking postmortem and I don't want to do this today, but I think that as it stands, because we still have this week of league action, we have the semis, and then we have the finals. So, but I think that overall the feeling is very positive. I think it's been extremely well welcomed by wrestling fans, by AEW fans. I think this is something that when Tony announces for next year, people are going to get naturally excited about it. Why? Because the matches were tremendous. Right? It's just as simple as that. And that's what I had said from the start. If everyone wants this to be the greatest North American tournament in the history of wrestling tournaments in North America, well, there you go. You have to deliver on the matches. That's the only way you're going to get people invested. That's how New Japan fans get invested in the G1. Because there's a level of of expectations that's created around it. So I think well, again, I will happily revisit and eat my shoe in a couple of weeks if things suddenly fall apart. And I'll revise and I'll tweak and whatever. But I feel we're at the very least, again, we're on the right path. We're on the right path for this one. And I kind of, like I said, I'll gladly tweak my thoughts here if I have to, if things fall apart. I'm realizing that, I started doing the epilogue here, started, doing the recap, the body's not even warm. The body's still alive. We don't even have a corpse yet, Warren, and you're doing the autopsy. That's not how it works. But that's where we're at for the G1 this week. So on Wednesday, we're looking out for Jay White. We're looking out for Swerve. It's between those two. It's a battle for second place, essentially, which is a lot more exciting than it sounds. And in the Blue League, it's anyone's game at this point. It's still anyone's. It's still up for everyone, but frankly, I don't see Danielson booking himself because apparently he's doing a lot of the booking here for the C2, from what I understand. I don't see him booking himself into a win here, and I think using the orbital bone that everyone is bashing in and so on and so forth. Did I say G1 C2? Thank you. Apparently, look, when you think about how he's booked himself in these matches with people going after the eye and punching him down. And, he took the loss. He took the pin from Mark Briscoe at Ring of Honor. We'll talk about that a little later. I think these are all elements that establish the fact that brittle Bryan Danielson is not going to be able to just withstand it. His body is going to shut down on him. It will not be able to follow. I think that's the story they're telling with Danielson right now, which makes a lot of sense. And I don't think it's going to be he's come from behind, he's come from underneath, he's overcome the odds. It's not a fucking, yes movement WWE story here. I think it's just, no, Danielson wasn't able, he was too hurt and his opponents took advantage of it and he's busted up. Because look, the guy has to rest now. He has to rest. He's going to the fucking Tokyo Dome in 2 weeks' time. 18 days, right? Something like that. Yeah, the boy has to rest. It's just as simple as that. I'm pretty sure Gedo would not be thrilled to have Danielson come in and be like, oh, you can't hit me here. You can't hit me here. If you want to hit me here, try to do it no one wants that. So we've got ourselves, I got to set up the bot. So we've got ourselves this fun stuff to talk about. Lots of happenings going around the world of pro wrestling, contracts, comings and goings, injuries, whatnot. I mean, injuries are not fun, but there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff happening here that I think we need to just cover because it's fun. It's fun stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening in TNA Pro Wrestling that we were just talking about a few seconds ago. Kushida. Well, if you are watching live, we were talking about it. If you weren't watching live, well, you should come join us live. We record live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Kushida has signed with TNA in an interview in the Battleground podcast. He said the relationship between me and New Japan Pro Wrestling can remain. There is no need for change. So basically, my non-existent relationship with New Japan doesn't need to change. It can stay the same way it was. That's the same. See, I did a funny joke because they're not using Kushida really. They just bring him in for the junior tag stuff, and then they send him home. Yeah, I mean, good. Like, honestly, good for him. He said he picked TNA because of his friendship with Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, and look, he's very close with Scott D'Amore as well. You know, I'm not surprised that Scott D'Amore is looking out for him, giving him a place to work. Kushida he had uprooted his entire family to move to the U.S. when he got hired by NXT, and everyone should have told him, don't do it, 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 Kushida, don't do it. But he did it. And so, I mean, good for him, right? I mean, this is all tremendous stuff. And look, New Japan wasn't interested really in bringing him on board. And, there was, he wanted, even before he left for NXT, like the word going around is that he wanted to, first of all, he wanted the gimmick change. He wanted to go heel, and he wanted to move up to heavyweight. And New Japan said, no. So basically, that's why he left, and he went to NXT, and he did the Marty McFly thing over in NXT, and he's still doing the Marty McFly thing, and he went back to New Japan, and he probably still wanted the gimmick change. And from what I had understood, they were ready to get him to do the gimmick change, but then he got injured. Was it injured, or did he get sick? I don't remember. Anyway, there was a health situation that happened, and that plan got derailed and never got back on rails. It's just how pro wrestling goes sometimes. So they got nothing for him. If he was expecting to come back and dominate the junior division, I don't know what his plan was. I don't like it. It doesn't quite work out that way anymore. He passed the torch to Hiromu, and Hiromu's been at the top, and there's been a good gaggle of guys underneath as well. And I think, in the meantime, a guy like El Desperado really took the time to establish himself in that in this post Kushida junior division. A lot of things were looking up for a while. With Leo Rush being there, I thought that would have been a tremendous division, and very unfortunate bullshit that happened there as well. But listen, I think this is a good spot for Kushida, and he's going to come in and he's going to work Impact, and he's going to be over, and people are going to be very excited to see him wrestle. Like, it's all going to be very good for him, right? So I think that works. TNA also re-signed Eddie Edwards. He was talking to PW Insider about the new deal. He said, "I don't think it's much of a surprise," which pretty much sums up everyone's feelings in regards to Eddie Edwards re-signing with TNA. He says, "I don't think my fans and friends are very much surprised that I'm sticking around because everybody knows how I feel about this company. I think especially right now with the momentum that we have with TNA coming back and all that incitement. For me, it was a no-brainer, and I'm very happy to be here and continue being here as long as I'm able to." Where would Eddie Edwards go otherwise? else would he go? No, but I mean, good for him. I mean, continue working and whatnot. It's fine. And, he's been with TNA since 2014. Like, he's part of the fabric, right? Brian Myers has also re-signed with TNA. By golly. Myers he's been a part of the roster since he was fired from WWE in 2020. It was one of the pandemic releases. And he had previously worked in TNA for a while, right? Mid 2000s, 2014 or so. 15, something like that. I mean, no big surprises there, right? We're just, these are the announcements that TNA has been doing in regards to their roster. And TNA also said that they're finalizing one of the biggest signings in company history. Scott D'Amore showed up on Busted Open Radio and said the following, quote, "We're going to have some surprises for you, some unexpected things, including, guys, we're right here at the goal line of finalizing one of, I think, the biggest signings in TNA. I think it's something that's really going to shake things up here on January 13th. And they're kind of going hard on this one here. Even had a little graphic pop up on social media that read, "Worlds will collide on June 13th. You won't believe who is showing up." And I've been trying to decode that. I've been trying to find out who this might be. If you're watching this on demand and you weren't here live, we had a whole chat about this during the Q&A session that we did a few minutes ago. A lot of people think that it's Matt Riddle. I kind of think it's Matt Riddle as well. And wouldn't be my choice, and I wouldn't be touting that, but yeah, I also understand, if TNA has some money backed up, they have some money squirreled away, maybe they can afford Mercedes Moné at this point, right? A lot of people are saying, we had reports that working plans for Moné and AEW have been scrapped. Doesn't mean that there won't be any other plans, that the plans that they had right now aren't working out. Maybe she's going somewhere else. Maybe she's going to TNA. Maybe she's going back to Japan. Maybe she's showing up at the Royal Rumble. Who knows? I think those are plausible. I think Moné could be plausible. Like, we don't know what kind of big announcement. Well, look, we're going to see at Hard to Kill, right? We're going to see just how big of an announcement this is, right? We're going to see how big of an announcement this is in regards to when Scott D'Amore says this is a big signing, the biggest in the history. Well, we'll see just how big that is. They bringing back Hogan. It's like, all right, TNA. They're clearly, they're entering another era. We'll see what they have up their sleeve. But I don't know. They could be just about anyone at this point. I don't think it's Kazuchika Okada. I honestly don't think it's Kazuchika Okada. I don't think that's his landing place, especially if the rumors are true that he has Barry Bloom. Barry Bloom wants to get paid. I don't think TNA is the place that's going to pay him. Yeah, I don't know. It's Dixie Carter. We're bringing back Jeff Jarrett. Riddle feels like a safe choice, doesn't it? Feels like a safe choice, although it's a bad choice. I don't know. Maybe he can rekindle whatever he had before getting signed to WWE. We'll see. I don't really care. Anyway, that's for TNA. We've got some news coming out of AEW on that front as well. Kenny Omega announced that he's going to be out of action indefinitely. He reported that he took a picture of himself in the hospital bed after his promo on Dynamite last week, which kind of explains why the promo was kind of bad and he seemed disinterested and out of it. Apparently he was in excruciating pain. It's been reported that Omega is diagnosed with diverticulitis, which is not fun. Yeah. Look, maybe you're eating right now. Maybe you're listening to this, enjoying, a nice breakfast with some scrambled eggs and toast, or, whatever. Maybe you're having I'm not going to break down what diverticulitis is. I'll let you Google that on your own time, but it doesn't sound pleasant. And he said he couldn't push through the pain anymore. That's why he checked himself in, and he just couldn't. He absolutely couldn't do it. According to Dave Meltzer, Kenny was afraid that it was a hernia again, like the one he suffered in 2022, because he really, really was in pain, and he was bloating a little bit. But from what we understand, it is the least serious theory that everyone had. So he's out indefinitely, but it might be shorter than what we expected. Of course, the whole angle with the Golden Jets is up in the air, but honestly, I don't give a shit. I don't care. In regards again to AEW, MJF is apparently not signed yet to the company. Oh, Jesus Christ, Joseph. See, no, that sounds awful, man. Have to remove part of your colon. Oh my God. No, that's just, I'm sorry, dude. That is awful. That's terrible. MJF is apparently not signed to AEW. Cody Rhodes was on a podcast or whatever, or a radio show. I don't know. Everyone has video of them in front of a microphone now. So, I for all you know, I'm broadcasting on FM radio. Who are me? Who am I kidding? If I ever broadcast on public airwaves, it's on AM frequencies. You're going to find me on the AM. You're going to get that good old fashioned gritty, aquarium sound. That's what you're getting from Warren Hayes if you ever find me. If I'm ever on the public airwaves, I'll leave the FMs to the posers. The real G's go on the AM dial. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, so Cody's he's on a show, and he basically said that he thinks MJF will be in WWE one day, which is, not a stretch, which is not a stretch at all. Which then spurred MJF to comment on the Sports Illustrated podcast that he still isn't signed with AEW. This is his quote here. I've been saying the same thing about my contract expiration date. I never lied. January 1st, 2024. When stuff like that gets leaked out, it makes me laugh, because I remember something leaked out about Cody having secretly re-signed, and then he showed up in WWE. Something got leaked out about, CM Punk and Tony Khan, and sort of let that one trail. I think fans leak out things that they want to be true. I love AEW. I want to stay in AEW. After this pay-per-view, World's End, he was talking about, it's time to assess the situation for a professional setting. So, not yet. He hasn't re-signed. Said not yet. He hasn't re-signed yet. I find this terribly hard to believe. Look, Max is a worker, and I think he's tremendous for that. Max, if you're listening, how you doing? Happy Hanukkah. Hope you're having a good holiday season. No, I find it hard to believe, and maybe I am working myself into a shoot here. Maybe. But if I follow my spidey sense here, and I apply every bit of knowledge that I know about pro wrestling, I pretty much guarantee you that a guy who is potentially leaving the company does not have practically unfettered control over his creative, and is not the current and is not holding the world championship, and is not putting guys over on his way out. And he's not involved in this storyline, which is plotted out till March or May, I can't quite remember, if he's leaving. Like, we're not doing this if we at the very least don't have an agreement, a handshake, a letter of intent, you know? Whereas, because look, the words that we're using here is signed, and maybe the contract, there's no ink yet on the contract. But, you know, let me tell you, a contract isn't necessarily, a work contract isn't necessarily established like they do in pro wrestling, where they pull out a paper and then someone does this on the back of another guy, and then you can send letters of intent. There's negotiations. There's things that go through lawyers and agents and so on and so forth. He might not be signed technically, but I don't buy it. And if anything, if he's talking about this openly and publicly, again, I love MJF, don't get me wrong. I think he's a tremendous worker, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like I'm one of the last stalwarts that still sticks up for him when he does things right, when he gets to this point here where he's talking about it publicly, don't you think it kind of adds a little intrigue, a little extra meta intrigue to the World's End match, like we're talking about in chat right now? The chat right here is talking about that right now. Oh, Joe was winning the title anyway, so on and so forth. So what happens if MJF retains the title on the 30th? Is this a guy that 2 days later is free to go wherever he wants and he can bring the title with him? No, that you don't do that in pro wrestling. That's what that's fucking nonsense. You don't do that bullshit, right? You don't build your entire show for months and then plan it out for months to come around the guy who might be leaving within months. It just doesn't make sense. Now, one would argue that recently, over the past year, Tony Khan maybe hasn't been making the best decisions in regards to a couple of things. Not just talking about MJF here. So maybe Tony is a little too confident here, right? Maybe he's a little too confident, and I don't know. And none of this makes sense. None of this makes sense. The devil angle and the brochachos, that means that if MJF leaves on September 1st, January 1st, there's an entire subset of pro wrestlers who fall into a creative void. And we've got nothing left. It doesn't make sense, folks. It just does not make sense. And I also want MJF to stay in AEW because I like MJF. Right? And if he goes to WWE, I won't see him anymore. And that bums me out. That just personally. And I like MJF. I really do. I really, really do. And the vignettes, not for me. It goes too far, and I think it's stupid. I don't think it's funny. But what he's been doing, he's a tremendous wrestler. He's a top tier promo. This babyface turn has made me excited for heel MJF again. I'm excited for him to switch back to being the edgelord, to telling stories about, crashing his car and switching places with his dead girlfriend. Or she wasn't dead, but you know what I mean. Or was she? I don't remember the story. Made a lot of people upset. I thought it was tremendous. He's a fucking heel. He's supposed to do this kind of shit. Anyway. That's what I'm excited for. But look, on the flip side, I don't want to be completely naive either. Right? I remember, just like MJF said, these stories about Cody Rhodes leaving for WWE and everyone going, pshaw, they're going to figure it out. gonna find a way. They're gonna find a way to get back around. And then next thing you know, motherfuckers showing up at WrestleMania, right? So, I mean, it's not out of the... But the difference between MJF and Cody at the time, Cody was in a thing for the TNT title with Sammy Guevara, and he put him up. He put him over, and he ta-ta, and he took his wife, and they went home. That's the difference. Like, Cody wasn't involved in a company-wide top tier angle that was prominently featured for months. So this is, of course, it's speculation, you know. I don't know what's going on. Max doesn't talk to me behind the scenes. It's nothing like that. I don't know. I don't have any insight into whether or not MJF is staying or not. But it doesn't, like, on a purely analytical, observable basis, none of it makes sense that he's not already signed, or at the very least that there's not a letter of intent that he's going to re-sign. That, you know, it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's what we're doing with MJF. Let's go over to WWE. What's going on there? Hey, the Mysterios re-signed. Dominic, Ray, they're sticking around for a couple of years. Good for Ray. Get the money. Dominic, good for him. You know, CM Punk, very stoked to work with Dominic Mysterio. I'm not being sarcastic. He's excited about it. Okay. Dominic stinks. That's fine. Keep him in the company that can hide all of his issues. They know how to handle wrestlers who stink. It'll be fine. Charlotte Flair was injured in a match against Asuka on SmackDown a couple of weeks ago. Apparently, she's going to undergo surgery for a torn ACL, MCL, and meniscus. Just might as well say everything in her leg exploded, turned to dust. Might as well just say that. But in the meantime, according to a report by Fightful Select, she has agreed to a contract extension that will keep her in the company for several more years. And the report indicates that it is a huge money increase over her last contract, making her one of the highest paid women in WWE's history. And apparently she's also getting her own travel bus. And it was also pointed out in the report that she is the first talent to agree to an extension since the TKO merger back in April. So that is an interesting little tidbit right there. There you go. So that's that when it comes to contracts. And now what we're going to do is jump right into some very quick news here in regards to a press release that was sent out by New Japan Pro Wrestling, stating that it has joined the United Japan Pro Wrestling Industry Group. 9 promotions in Japan have formed a new industry group, which has the mission statement to further the presence of pro wrestling and its cultural merit in Japanese society at large, allow professional wrestling to contribute further to cultural and sporting sectors, and work towards continued health and prosperity of the industry. So the 9 companies that have joined aboard are New Japan Pro Wrestling, All Japan Pro Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Noah, DDT, Ganbare Pro Wrestling, Big Japan, Dragon Gate, Stardom, and Tokyo Joshi Pro. On top of this announcement here with the the press release, the United Japan Pro Wrestling Industry Group announced that they're going to have a joint event featuring all 9 promotions on May 6, 2024 at the Budokan. The show will be held under that specific banner, which is very interesting to me. And a lot of people, look, here's the thing. This isn't like suddenly a super promotion. And, I kind of ultimately I look at this and I'm like, this is a lobby group, right? This is essentially what it is. It's an association, just like, any group of professionals in the world have, you have your, authors have their associations, and, kitchen utensil suppliers have associations and shit like that, and so they all sort of come together here, to be essentially a lobby group, a pressure group, to make sure that their interests are well served and put together, and probably to, help rise each other. Because ultimately, there's precedent in the history of Japanese pro wrestling for companies to work together. The rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation. We saw it last year. Well, last year, just this year. They held the All Together Now show. I forget what it was called exactly. The All of Us Together Hang 10. Whatever. It doesn't matter. And then the Muto retirement show, and Hiromu's Junior All-Star show. All that stuff. There, and even going back in history, Japanese pro wrestling has always been more open to collaborations, as opposed to here in North America, where it's like stomp out the competition, never talk about them kind of thing. Bury them 6 feet under as quickly as possible. So when I read this, I was like, okay, what's in it for me? Oh, we're going to get a joint show. All right, that's fine. We probably would have got a joint show, whatever. It feels like an administrative thing. It feels just like I said, it's a lobby group, an industry support group. Like, other than that, it doesn't really. I don't think it changes really anything. If it does, well, maybe in a couple of years. I don't see how it's going to make things any different. They say here in the press release, without an industry-wide group for professional wrestling in Japan, the unprecedented crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic made it all the more clear that there was a need to consolidate and express accurate information and best operating practices between promotions, as well as to communicate effectively with national and municipal governments. In a bid to better anticipate and adapt to societal changes in the future, 9 Japanese promotions at the forefront of pro wrestling in the country will be a part of a collective industry group. See, and in their activities here, as they will be actively engaged in actions of merit, such as governmental communications and requests, strengthening connections to other industries and sectors, sharing resources and practices, including those related to wrestler health and safety, such as the provision of financial support for wrestlers while injured, and to offer compliance training. Group members will also consolidate event data for historical archive purposes. That's cool as fuck. That, as someone who observes the business, that's dope as hell. But see, I think it's more of an administrative thing than anything else. It's not like suddenly a super promotion. It's going to be a banner under which, everyone's going to operate. And look, knowing the nature of pro wrestlers, maybe at some point this is all going to fall apart because suddenly people are not just going to get along, which is entirely possible. And, but I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm not sitting here and saying this is bad. I'm just saying that for fans, maybe it's not an obvious gain for us. I think it will probably be very useful for the promotions, for the wrestlers, but for us, I'm shrugging. I'm going, I'm not quite sure what this is. I'm not sure how this benefits me. And in the chat, we're saying, ironically, they're putting this together without Okada right now, the perfect face of the group. He was auspiciously absent here, but, Hiroshi Tanahashi was there. That's fine. So was Kaito. Maybe that's why Kitamiya was there. Maybe that's why Okada wasn't. Like, I don't want that little shit there. So, it's interesting. It's interesting. We'll see what kind of impact it has later down the road. But as it stands right now, like I said, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's move on. And that's what we're going to do right here. We're going to move on and talk about Ring of Honor Final Battle 2023. It's time for the review of the final Ring of Honor pay-per-view of 2023. It happened on December 15. I don't know if Master Wato was there. Happened on December 15, 2023. From Garland, Texas, Curtis Culwell Center. I have here, I'm not sure this is the up-to-date number. Give me just a second here, and I'm going to pull up the WrestleTix information because I'm not quite sure the information that I have here is correct as far as attendance goes, or at least tickets distributed. Here we go. No, it is actually correct. 1,964 tickets distributed for Final Battle. That's not good. It's really not good. That wasn't tremendous. Not even the promise of, not the promise, but the reputation of TKROH shows being tremendous pay-per-views. Not even that was enough to allow over 2,000 people, to get inside. They had done the setup for like over 3,000, for 3,000 people, 300,051 people. I mean, it's a little embarrassing. It's a little embarrassing. I don't know if we were just going off the idea, that Ring of Honor pay-per-views are always so great and are tremendous events, but, and that Tony was sort of banking on that. Which is possible, which could be. And overall, I mean, this wasn't a bad wrestling show, but I don't think it measures up to the other to the previous TK ROH pay-per-views that we've been getting. I think this was clearly the weakest offering. It wasn't one of these shows where it wasn't like, what was the previous one? The one with that was main evented by Willow and Athena. Slips my mind right now. The one that was basically built in a week, right? That was all put together in a week because there were no matches being announced and so on. That turned out to be a spectacular wrestling show, like one of the shows of the year. This one here, I mean, there's some tremendous matches on this card that we're going to talk about, but there were some legitimate lulls. There are some matches that I kind of thought were boring. And I think this was a little bit of a slip here by Tony. And if anything, it's an indication that maybe he does need to focus a little more on Ring of Honor and create some matches, create some compelling things. Let's not forget, not that long ago, most of the champions were all AEW guys, right? You had the Trios champions, which were the Hung Bucks. You had Samoa Joe, who was the TV champion. You had, of course, Shibata was still the pure champion, and he probably still would be, let's be honest. But there's just not enough, there was just not enough juice squeezed out of this fruit here. It wasn't, it wasn't great. It really wasn't. A couple of great matches, but I'd say a good show overall. But there were really some circumstances in this on the show where I was like, and I feel like if Tony had built, better feuds, stronger candidates, stronger challengers to a lot of the titles, there would have probably been a little more interest in this one. I think he's getting a little too cocky with his with Ring of Honor here, where he's like, oh, everyone's going to go in and tear the house down. Well, it didn't quite happen this time around. Let's get into it. I don't want to spend too much time on the pre-shows because I'm already going quite long on the Mr. Warren Hayes show itself, and I want to be able to send you all home as well. But Taya Valkyrie defeated Jasmine Allure. That is exactly, you picture this match in your mind, and that's exactly what it was. Marshall and Eric, I'm completely out of it. Marshall and Ross Von Erich defeated the Outrunners. The Von Erichs stink. Okay, that's just how it goes. A decade in the business, and they still wrestle like they're fresh out of the PC. They're just, the Dallas crowd, the Texas crowd, clearly behind them. It's the Von Erichs. What are you going to do? Little tie-in with the movie and all. I get all of it. But, Marshall and Ross stink. Kevin didn't come out with them, which I thought was weird. Then we had an eliminator match to fill in the last spot in the Survival of the Fittest match that was happening later on in the evening for the TV title. And it's Bryan Keith who got it by defeating Jack Cartwheel. I thought this was pretty good. Look, Tony Khan really likes Bryan Keith. And I mean, between this stuff on Ring of Honor TV and then showing up on Collision against Orange Cassidy in a match that I thought was a blast. I thought it was dope as hell. And Bryan Keith just, the local boy, super over, looking like a star. Something's going to happen with Bryan Keith and the TK verse at the very least, if it's not AEW. We know this from the past that sometimes there are wrestlers who are signed to AEW, but they don't get the graphic just yet, but they do have the pen and paper done. The paperwork's all in, but they just haven't announced that they, sometimes Tony waits for the moment to push out the graphic. That's showmanship. It's not, we don't need to know the date of whatever. It's part of the show. The All Elite, the X is All Elite. That's part of the show. So I wouldn't be surprised if I, bumped into Bryan Keith, excuse me. If I bumped into Keith Lee, I'd bump to the floor. That'd be awful. I'd hurt myself. If I were to run into Keith Lee, to Bryan Keith, which is even worse when you think about it, and asked him, hey, you in AEW, and he told me, yeah, I've got a contract, I wouldn't be surprised. And Jack Cartwheel looked good. I think he's a guy who'd get over in Ring of Honor, AEW. I think he's the kind of guy who'd get over really easily. Daniel Garcia defeated Blake Christian in a fun little match, and let's just move on. Let's get to the meat and potatoes here. The opener was El Hijo del Vikingo defeating Black Taurus to retain the Triple A Mega title. Where are my notes? My notes are all over the place because I watched this. Bear with me here, because I watched this at different moments. I didn't watch it live because I was at my office Christmas party on Friday evening. I had a lovely time, by the way. I ate some delicious salmon. It's great. So and I was watching it and I watched Collision in the meantime, and then I watched some CMLL, and my notes are all over the place is what I'm trying to say. Okay, here we go. I thought this was good. But also messy. And and there's I think there's two reasons for this. I think it was good because of Black Taurus, and I think it was messy because of Vikingo. And that's the story of the match. And I think I ended up giving this match 4 stars, but this is entirely off the back of Taurus, who was tremendous. He was the MVP of this. He made this fucking match. You know, Vikingo was kind of off, and I don't know if it's the Ring of Honor ring ropes where he couldn't do his springboards and all that bullshit, but Taurus was so on point, just looking like a complete beast, devastating Vikingo. And he's so devastating that Vikingo can't string offense together. When he does, it gets exciting. He's doing, tornillos and extra spins on stuff. But then again, he can't get everything off. There's the springboards that he can't do. Escalera powerbomb by Vikingo, which on the apron, which was great. The inside out 450 splash, that was also tremendous. Taurus did an avalanche gorilla press, right? Where he's on the top rope and he's gorilla pressing Vikingo, and he doesn't just like dump Vikingo off. No, he jumps off and dumps Vikingo. Like, I'm just sitting there going, geez, this is tremendous. He does a moonsault senton driver. Vikingo a 630 to the floor. Backbreakers by Taurus. Vicious powerbomb over the knee. But it's the crucifix and the 730 to get it done for Vikingo. But look, Taurus looked fantastic. I don't know what we need to do to bring this guy into North America. Well, he's already in North America. I mean, up higher north. I don't know who you need to. I don't know. This is fantastic. Look, honestly, Taurus was outstanding and made this match. I would have given anyone lesser, and I would not have given this 4 stars. Because Vikingo had a night off. I don't know, an off night. I mean, wasn't all that great. Do you think maybe also it's, we're kind of, now we've seen his bag of tricks? Maybe. I don't know. Then we had the Ring of Honor World 6-Man Tag Team titles, where the Mogul Embassy successfully retained against the TMDK trio of Shane Haste, number 1 Sweet Boy Kosei Fujita, and Bad Dude Tito. I thought this was good. This was a blast, actually. I enjoyed this match tremendously. I'm a big fan of Bad Dude Tito. And that hot tag he had in the match, where he was striking and diving, it was tremendous. It's tremendous stuff. That was followed up by a great sequence by Shane Haste. Cage is on the outside, does the inside-outside suplex. Outside-inside suplex, which is always tremendous. The Mogul Embassy takeout, Bad Dude Tito and Shane Haste towards the end. So the number 1 Sweet Boy is all alone with those 3 monsters. He tries his best to fight them off, but they overwhelm him, get the win. Simple star. I gave it 3 3/4 stars. I thought this was a blast. Great stuff. Great action. I really like Bryan Cage. And I like the gates. I think the gates are continuously improving. Bryan Cage. Look, I know it's a thing to not like Bryan Cage. It's, I don't remember where I was talking about this. But he, pound for pound, you put both guys. Is this a hot take? But Bryan Cage is better than Wardlow. Big man for big man, athleticism and presentation. I think Bryan Cage is a much more compelling, he's much more compelling than Wardlow. more well-rounded. Just saying. Then we had the I Quit match. Ethan Page defeats Tony Nese. I wrote a full page of notes for the I Quit match. And you're going to say, Warren, that shouldn't be... But I don't... Like, there's matches that I feel deserve full pages in my notebook of notes. And there's others that it's like, look, like the TMDK Mogul Embassy. Like, it's about a half a page. It's about this, right? You know, I've got, look, right here, the Continental Classic, the Danielson Brody King, a 4 3/4 star match. Goes all the way here, and then I start writing big because when I get excited, I write big. You know. So I wrote a full page of notes for. If you're listening to this on audio, I apologize because I have, but I wrote a full page of notes on Tony Nese and Ethan Page for a match that was very fine, good, but so what's the word I'm looking? Uneventful? And I was afraid of this last week when I was doing the preview. I don't know if you recall. I was like, look, an I Quit match, and it's not main eventing. It's a mid-card I Quit match. I'm not excited for it. I feel like it's going to go like 15 minutes and they'll be screaming into the microphone and then, something goofy's going to happen. And that's kind of what happened. It went, longer than 15 minutes. It went 20. I thought this was fine, but man, they really can't help themselves when they have microphones, do they? In these I Quit matches. They have to cut fucking promos during the match, right? Like, I'm going to give you one more chance to quit. And it's just like, put the fucking microphone in. I really hate how this shit is handled. And it irks me and it's a pet peeve, but it really does take away my enjoyment when guys are cutting promos during I Quit matches. I'm like, beat the shit out of the other guy instead of being a pompous ass. Just do it. And there was a lot of, gimmickry and, the powder and then the handcuffs and Mark Sterling. And I don't know. And then they do. And I'll tell you the moment that I got completely taken out of this. The Hurricane Rana, the chairs, the Frankensteiner, where Ethan Page sets up chairs in the ring, and then they go up onto the turnbuckle and they fight, and Tony Nese is supposed to head scissor him off or Frankensteiner him off or whatever the fuck. And he does it, but they overshoot the chairs. So Page lands all the way over there. The chairs are right there. They're completely overshot. I think it's Caprice Coleman. He said, well, didn't quite land when we're supposed to. And Ethan Page is selling it like he got destroyed on the chairs. And so because it's allowing fucking Tony Nese then to go out and get the keys and unlock uncuff Mark Sterling and all this bullshit and grab the microphone. I'm going to give you one. I'm like, at least pick him up and slam him on the bump didn't seem serious enough to demand that long of a sell, if that makes sense. So that at that point, I'm like, oh, all right, it doesn't matter. Like at this point, it doesn't matter. Now, I think things picked up a little towards the end with when Ethan Page was handcuffed himself, right? Had his hands behind his back and he was fighting off the dudes by himself. I thought that was pretty fun, but Here's my official stance on Ethan Page. He won, by the way. He choked out Tony Nese with the chain, with and Tony was like, "No, I give up. I quit. Because he was gonna die." Here's my official verdict on Ethan Page. After seeing him in this match, after seeing him in the Kenny Omega match, here's my verdict on Ethan Page. He is a very good lower mid-card wrestler, and he's a competent pro wrestler, and that's where it's at. It has a good amount of charisma. But, there's some people who are so incredibly high on him and it's like, oh, push Ethan Page with it. But I don't see it. And look, maybe. See, here's the thing. Even we did not know that Kenny Omega was hurt a couple of weeks ago when he was in Montreal taping Collision with Ethan Page. We didn't know we didn't know about the diverticulitis. And yet, Kenny Omega delivered a very high level, a very good, let me rephrase that, a very good Kenny Omega performance that shines like Kenny Omega usually does. Like, he didn't know, it wasn't a match, it wasn't an Ospreay match, it wasn't an Okada, but even Kenny Omega's most basic work is already higher than a lot of people. So when Ethan Page was hyping up this match saying, I've been on a winning streak in Ring of Honor and I want to test myself against the best, like, and you can recall, I'm on record for this, talking about it on the Collision review. I said I was looking forward to Ethan Page. I was looking forward to Ethan Page's next level. And what I got was Ethan Page. And, nothing that I've never seen before from the guy. But nothing less, which is fine, but doesn't have the sizzle. Doesn't have that thing where you're like, oh shit, here we go. And it felt like a proving ground match for him, a moment for him to break out. And we just got the same old Ethan Page that we usually get, which can be fine for fans of his, but for me, I was looking for the moment that I was looking for the thing that would turn me into a believer. And it's the same thing with this I Quit match where I'm like, okay, well, we're leaning into it. What do you got, pal? A little more, a little bit of, pretty much the same. It's like, okay, I think this is Ethan Page's ceiling. I think that he's capped here. And that's fine. Not everyone can be superstars, top level guys. And this is where he's at. And now he's, back, so Scorpio Sky came in to help him win the match. And so they're going to be a thing again. An act that never really took off. And that was interesting because they had Dan Lambert hanging around doing mic work for them. Let's be honest. So, okay. So for me, this is where Ethan Page is going to live in my head. He's a fine lower mid-card worker that people get into. It'll, and that's fine. But, I cannot sit around and and let people tell me, oh, he's fantastic, he's great, push. No. He's fine. I think he's in a good little spot. I gave it 3.25 stars, this match. I think that's fair. Nyla Rose defeated Vert Vixen. This was a little bit out of the blue, right? Some squash matches on a pay-per-view. I'm like, what are we doing? I mean, I think what we're doing is we're establishing the next contender for the women's title. I think, because they did the same thing with Taya. Now they're doing it with Nyla. Look, you know, pound for pound, you're going to give me Nyla Rose any fucking day of the week. Yeah, it was an extended squash. I got nothing. I don't rate squash matches. Then we had the Ring of Honor World Television title, Survival of the Fittest, 6-way elimination match. By God, pal. Kyle Fletcher defeated Dalton Castle, Brian Keith, Commander, Lee Johnson, and Lee Moriarty to become the new TV champion. This was tremendous. Now, it was your spot fest. It was the crowd pleaser. This was the one where you wanted people jumping around and doing insane shit, and this is exactly what we got. We even, some delightful comedy wrestling, courtesy of Dalton Castle and his being thrown out of the ring gimmick, which I thought was well wrapped up with Kyle Fletcher. And we got some great showing by Lee Moriarty, having, eliminating Castle and Lee Johnson. Brian Keith even getting some action in here. I'm telling you, there's something with Brian Keith. TK really likes the guy. I really like him. Look, let's be honest. Brian Keith has the thing. He has something. He's got the sneer. He's got the look. He looks the part. The guy comes into the ring. He looks like a fucking badass. He looks like a pro wrestler. And he's tremendous. And this match was tremendous. And it really fucking picked up when Fletcher and Commander were down just to the both of them. And here's what's great. It wasn't a fucking scramble with everyone all over the... You had a basic set of rules. 2 guys in the ring at once. One guy rolls out another guy, like lucha rules. But elimination, so you get rid of people as you're going out. And the tension builds up. You don't need a fucking... Every 3 minutes, someone else comes in. They get pinned. They go to the penalty box. And whatever the fuck, I don't know why there's not more elimination matches, quite frankly, in pro wrestling. Because most of the time they rule. And this was really well put together. By God, this was good. And the final stretch between Commander and Fletcher... See, I told you about my notes. When I get excited, I write big. See, look at this here. This is, in the build-up, and here we go. Tremendous stuff. And Commander and Fletcher doing all sorts of wild shit. And they're kicking out of this wild shit. Springboard Destroyer by Commander. 450 springboard on the apron. And then in the ring... Kyle Fletcher does a brainbuster on the fucking top rope. Lands his jumping tombstone for the win, which apparently is going to be his singles finish. Just a tremendous match. 4.5 stars. That was a blast. Get the blood pumping after a bit of a cool down. Usually at this point, in the other Ring of Honor pay-per-views, we're all on the edge of our seats. We're going, Jesus Christ, is this ever going to stop? Great after great after great. No, we had Mogul Embassy and TMDK, which was very good, don't get me wrong, but was very good. Then the I Quit match, which, I don't know, didn't do it for me. Then we get a squash match. Then we got this. But then... You turn around and we get the pure title match where Wheeler Yuta defeated Tom Lawler in a fine match, I guess. Like the last couple of minutes was pretty good, and throughout the match they worked a really good story with Yuta, giving up rope breaks early and using a ref distraction, to punch, to show that he's he's ready to be sneaky. And they worked the limbs, right? And it was solid limb work. Yuta worked the legs, and Lawler with wrist locks, just trying to break down the arms, and they go in and out of submissions, and it's all real and tense. And Yuta, towards the end, we're getting really there. And then Yuta pulls out the seatbelt in a really messy conclusion, a really messy finish. The camera wasn't well positioned. The ref seemed in the way. Lawler's shoulders were up. It is a bit of a mess. I'm not quite sure what they were doing here, other than having Wheeler pull out the seatbelt for the emergency victory here. Then after the match, Lawler comes in for the handshake. He gets kneed in the groin by Wheeler. That brings out Hook, who comes out to protect Lawler. Yuta rolls out of the ring, but then when Hook's back is turned, he gets back in and kicks him in the no-nos as well. So he leaves Lawler and Hook flat on their backs. 3 1/4 star is what I gave this. It was all right, but nothing. Nothing that gets me excited. And then we get Shane Taylor versus Keith Lee, which, man, this was kind of dull. This was kind of boring. I don't know, just big guys ramming into each other. It felt like a big man territory match from the 80s. I don't know. I don't know. Jackhammer by Keith Lee gets the win. The top rope destroyer by Shane Taylor was impressive. And I went, whoa. But was it enough to save my enjoyment of this match? Not really. 2 3/4 stars. And then we had match of the night, the trios of Mark Briscoe and FTR versus the BCC that started off with a fight to honor Jay Briscoe and ended up being a fight without honor. And I thought this was tremendous. And I was so excited for this. And it worked so well. A fitting tribute, right? Look, okay. Danielson, first and foremost, wrestled in his first Ring of Honor match since Glory by Honor in 2009, right? Which is the last match that he had before heading to the Fed. And so that was a big deal. And, even Riccaboni was putting over the fact that he was putting over his Final Battle record, right? It was a 5-1 or something like that, I don't know. But Danielson, everyone here rocked and rolled. This was objectively a great match. The BCC worked down Dax at first, and they're working quick tags in and out. This, I really believe, right? I think this is the first time that Mox, Claudio, and Danielson teamed as a trio since the BCC was formed. I think this is the first time as a trio, right? And they're working great as a team. Quick tags in and out. Until Mark Briscoe gets in with an early hot tag, and then he takes out the entire BCC. He and FTR hit the redneck boogie, and everyone starts landing stuff, and it's just tremendous. Mox and Dax are bleeding. Mark Briscoe kicks out of a neutralizer. Claudio kicks out of a shatter machine. It all spills to the floor. They're fighting everywhere in the arena, up the ramp. And then we get a count out. Everyone goes boo. But then what does Mark Briscoe do? He grabs the microphone and says, motherfucker. Well, he didn't say that, but he says, we're making it and everything goes match. Ding, ding, ding. Tony Khan accepts. Let's go. So Mox, what does he do? He pulls out a fork. Of course, he's got a fork. John Moxley always walks around with a fork. And he starts using it on Dax. And Mark Briscoe gets shoved off the top rope and onto a barbed wire covered ladder. And the BCC, they're in control during this part. But Cash Wheeler, he puts Claudio out through a table on the floor. And Dax pile drives Mox off of the apron through a table on the floor that's covered in barbed wire and tacks. And Mark finally gets the win on Bryan Danielson, Jay Driller onto a pile of chairs. And I was shocked that it was Danielson who took the pin here. But as we talked about earlier in the Continental Classic bit, it makes sense, that, everyone's been working at his eye and he's not 100% and everyone knows this. And it's just been part of the greater story. So it makes sense. And I thought that was tremendous. This match was amazing. I think it's fantastic. I think if you haven't seen it, you should go back and watch it. It's a tremendous, I gave it 4 3/4 stars. Just a balls to the wall, tremendous match that ultimately you couldn't have found a better symbol, a better way to honor the memory of Jay and the Briscoes themselves, right? Than by having like an opening match that had all this great action and great wrestling, and then another half that's just bloody and violent. Like these are the two hallmarks of the Briscoes. Like no matter in what environment they were in, they were always great. Whether it got really, really hardcore and rough or whether it was just, straight up wrestling. That's how good the Briscoes were. And I think it's a fitting way to pay tribute to Jay, ultimately. It's just an astounding piece of work by tremendously talented pro wrestlers. That's what I got for you. 4 3/4 stars, and I think you should seek this match out. Just amazing. And then we had the main event. No, not even. Then we had and then a proving ground match, Eddie Kingston versus Anthony Henry. I mean, what are we doing? Yeah, you have to get your champion on the show, but what is this positioning? What are we doing here? Did we need a cool down match? Because I feel like I just needed to stay hot. And this cooled me down. I was like, nothing wrong with the match. It's just kind of nothing. Eddie wins. Like, who cares? I don't know. And I love Eddie. Anthony Henry's great. 2 wrestlers I like. Just don't care. It's a 5-minute match. Who gives a shit? What is this doing on a pay-per-view? And then the main event, Ring of Honor Women's World Title match, second pay-per-view in a row that the women main event in Ring of Honor. Athena defeated Billy Starks to retain. I like this match quite a bit. Quite a bit. And I feel there was really 2 parts to this match, and I think there were unwillingly 2 parts. Very distinct anyway. The opener, right up to Billy Stark's comeback, and then the latter part after the comeback, right? We can chalk it up to a bunch of reasons, and I think I thought the opener was sloppy. I don't think the ladies were on point. I think Billy was a little nervous, and frankly, look, she's 19 and she's in a big time match with Athena, and there's a lot of pressure. Not that she can't deal with it, but there's certain things that you expect out of world championship matches that at her young age, even though she has a ton of experience on this kind of stage, with the lights and the cameras and all, and the expectations, it's another level than working the indies all the time. There was some sloppiness and things that were a little slow that I feel weren't connecting, that you can only chalk up to inexperience. Things that you can iron out as you go along. Ultimately, I think Billy looked great in the match, and I think she did fantastically. But it ended up being a little bit what I expected, is that her inexperience, and I'm not saying greenness, because I think she's a very good pro wrestler. I think it's just it's a question of inexperience. being in these types of matches, in these types of situations. She's only going to get better. She's only going to improve. But once we got out of the first comeback, then I think things started to cook. They seemed to hit a rhythm. You know, we even got an Avalanche Kreutz Wrath in this match. And things really started dropping. You know, they really started dropping some big moves, and you started to feel some urgency. You know, Lexi Nair's involved in this. She's a minion or whatever. And she, you know, Athena wants her to help her cheat with the belt or whatnot. But, you know, Billy Starks fights back. She hits a Rubik's Cube on the apron, which was tremendous. And then there's some near falls until Athena just slaps Billy into a submission and gets the win. Look, I like this. I thought this was really good. It wasn't on the level of Athena Willow Nightingale, which is still a tremendous match, but I thought this was very good. I thought this was really good. Athena was tremendous again. And look again, Billy Starks, I think, convinced a lot of people that she's better than what they thought she was, if that makes sense. I think she made believers out of haters. And overall, I think this was her best career match. In everything that I've seen from her, I think this is bar none the best match that she's had. I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to minimize how good she was. There's just stuff that reality sinks in at some point. You're like, well, she's very good, but these types of spots, you get comfortable in them the more you do them. So again, you have to throw people into the deep end. And ultimately, you know, unlike other situations and other promotions, Billy swam. She didn't sink. She swam. And she's only going to become a better swimmer as she keeps doing these types of matches, these types of matches and being in these types of positions. I thought this was really good. I gave it the 4 flat. And just a great match. I really enjoyed it. I didn't like the post match though, where they all make up and we're back to square one. There's no progression. There's no change. There's no evolution in the characters. I was like, what are we doing? Okay, boo. We're all minions again. It's who cares? You know, I didn't like the finish. The post match, I should say. I like the finish of the match, but I didn't like the post match. And then the question, of course, that everyone is asking, well, who's coming for Athena at this point? Who can beat her? Well, you know, I think they've started warming up a couple of people on this show, being Taya Valkyrie and Nyla Rose. But then again, I don't see either of them beating Athena. I think this eventually all comes full circle with Willow finally getting the win over Athena. But right now, you know, Athena is Ring of Honor right now. This is her show. And she's tremendous. The work she's been putting in here is just phenomenal. We don't talk about it enough. But something's going to crack at some point. Right now, she's dominant. She's a beast. No one can take her down. We'll see what the future holds. But right now, you know, the title's in a good place. And, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, this was another great pay-per-view. I don't know if it was great. I think it was a good wrestling show, but that was supported by 3 tremendous, look, 4 4-star matches. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, right? That's not a waste of time. But there's, you know, I think this is the first official slip up of the TKROH era. And if this is how the pay-per-views for Ring of Honor are going to be developing moving forward, you know, if this is what we're going to be doing, well, Tony, I think, has to rethink his strategy, and he can't just like slapdash together matches at the last minute like he's been doing for the past 2 pay-per-views. I mean, the previous one was just built within 5 days, and that was preposterous, but it turned out to be one of the best matches, one of the best shows of the year. This one here, a little more build, a little more meat around it, but it didn't deliver from top to bottom. It wasn't a great show. It's a good little show with four-star matches on it. Am I being too difficult? I don't know. Maybe. Could be. But I'm also wrapping up the weekly wrestling inspection. How about that? Well then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. If you are watching this on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes right now, leave a like if you don't mind. And hey, a little subscription also would be pretty dope. That would be awesome. Then I appreciate it in advance. It's all little things you can do to help grow the podcast, and that's tremendous. Same thing if you're listening on your favorite podcast application. 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, 5-star ratings on Spotify. Help out tremendously. I will be back on Thursday with another AEW Dynamite review. We're going to be closing out the last night of Gold League action. That'll be exciting. And I'll be back on Christmas Eve for the Collision review to wrap up the Blue League. So that'll be exciting. Look, thank you all very much for being here. And I hope you all have a lovely Christmas. I'll be back next Tuesday, God willing, to regale and entertain you with more stuff. But in the meantime, have a great Christmas. Enjoy it whichever way you can, however you can, and with whoever brings you the most joy in your life. That's all that's really most important. Enjoy it, have fun, and gosh, I'll see you next time.